As you guys know, I'm Heather Kelly with Beverage Business Consulting. We exist for small business owners of all different sizes to learn and grow their businesses with best practices from corporations. And so basically, we've got a couple of folks on today, Jennifer Posner and Shar Banerjee. Did I say that correctly?
You did.
They're both HR specialists, experts, etc. And they're going to talk to us today about the very important variable hourly employee benefits landscape. As we know, this has become an especially hot button issue now that, unionization has become a conversation in small businesses, etc. And so I'm very excited for them to talk about this. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Jennifer Posner, my dear friend and dance partner, and let her take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. One of the main obstacles of a small business is competing for talent with larger businesses that can offer better benefits, which is a critical factor when many people are choosing an employer. Shar and I are going to walk through a few strategies as a small business owner that you can use to establish a successful talent attraction and retention policy. I'm Jennifer Posner with JD Posner Business Solutions, a member of the Beverage Business Consulting Collective. Hello to all of you. With many years as a financial controller in the restaurant and coffee industry, I've been responsible for accounting and human resources for a few growing companies. In these roles, I've been selecting and managing the employee benefits and have had the pleasure of working with Shar, who made this task a much more manageable one. Welcome, Shar.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Shar Banerjee, and I'm an employee benefit consultant with One Digital. And I've been helping businesses, especially in food and beverage, with their benefits for about 18 years. My goal is to be a resource for you and your team and your employees to make benefits understood and not a burden for you or your staff to implement. And what I do is I work with you to strategize on what works best for your business.
As we get started, imagine that you're about to open your third coffee shop location and your general manager of 5 years is leaving to relocate across the country. You found your ideal replacement, but they currently have a job with a much larger company. To come to work for you, they are asking for health benefits and a retirement as part of their compensation package. You haven't offered health insurance before, but you're interested in doing so. Where do you start? Shar and I are here to talk you through the process. During this webinar, we're going to discuss the legalities around offering medical insurance. What are variable hour employees and how do they fit into your planning for this insurance? What types of medical insurance plans are there and what options do you have? How to then budget for these expenses? And what other options do you have for benefits? So Shar will jump into the legalities.
So, what companies legally need to offer medical insurance to their employees? Generally speaking, 50 full-time employees or greater are the ones that are mandated to offer benefits, but we all know that to be competitive in a market, much smaller organizations need to offer benefits. There is a lot of conversation around that, and I'm happy to answer any questions about what you have seen, what your employees have asked for. But the legalities of it all, what does ACA mean and why does it matter to you? Well, the ACA is the Affordable Care Act, and with that, since 2010, we've had to deal with compliance, 1095s in order to showcase the benefits that are being offered. And what is the difference between the Affordable Care Act minimal essential coverage and minimal essential coverage as a plan, or as you guys may know of it as a MEC plan? So it is very complicated. And the difference between the two is that the Affordable Care Act minimal essential coverage says that as an employer, you are mandated to offer certain benefits in your benefit plan. Like it has to have preventative care. It's about a list of 12 things, and I won't go through all of those, but those are the things that have to be offered for you to offer a group plan that is compliant. Someone in the industry got creative and said, we're going to offer what's called a MEC plan, and that is also named a minimal essential coverage plan. It is not the same. The difference is that a MEC plan that is not attached to the ACA is really a short-term insurance policy. And what that means to you is it does not cover anything catastrophic. It does not cover anything really besides preventative, and it's not an insurance plan. So you essentially are paying a really small amount of money in comparison to a larger group plan, because you're not getting the services. So your employees and yourself, if you're on the plan, are not fully covered. And I can, like I said, dive into specifics there, but it is very complicated. And, some of the other things that you might want to take into consideration when constructing a benefit plan are all of the acronyms, because insurance loves that, the HRAs, the HSAs, and the FSAs. So a health reimbursement account, health savings account, a flexible spending account. And the differences in those are based off of what benefits you are looking to provide your employees. And, we can there are different carriers, there are different plan designs, and what you want to do is make sure you're capturing what's best, not only from a financial perspective, but also what networks, how does that impact the cost? What are the differences, like the deductibles, copay, coinsurance, and all of that? And that's why you would work with someone like me to help strategize what makes the most sense for you as the employer and for your employees as you learn about what their wants and needs are. Some questions that also come up is, do you have to offer insurance to all of your employees? If you are over 50 full-time employees, the answer is yes to all of the full-time employees. If you're smaller than that, we can get creative. And what you can do, though, is regardless of size, is you can construct it in a way that like management can have different benefits than the rank and file employees. And there are different legal requirements around all of that and how you put that together. So basically, it's a long way of saying that you do have options and you're able to build it in such a way that you can grow and expand and make your employees happy at the same time. I'd like to pause there because I know there was a ton of information, and see if any of you have any specific questions or anything about what I've talked about. I'm just that good. That's amazing. All right. Next slide, please. All right.
Oh.
So this is you, Jennifer. Sorry.
This is me. What is a variable hour employee? That's the employee who works different shifts each week and doesn't consistently work the same number of hours. This is for those schedules that are school schedules, day off requests, all the call outs. You need these variable hour employees so that the owner or manager isn't filling in all of those other shifts. And it can lead to having employees that work 45 hours one week and then 20 the next, which makes it really challenging when you're trying to figure out who is full-time to qualify for insurance. You can determine who is eligible by running monthly payroll reports and then combing through them to apply a look back period, which is something I will have Shar explain later because she will do a much better job at that. And with these variable hour employees, these numbers can be constantly changing. So you need to have constant oversight and be communicating with both the person writing the schedule and the people that select to be on your insurance plan. There are different options when forming and determining which kind of insurance plan you're going to be on and who would qualify as full-time. So legally, people that work over 30 hours a week are going to be full-time, but you can make other decisions. You could decide to offer insurance to everybody that works over 25 hours a week, just to give more benefits to your employees. So that's something that you'll want to go through the process of setting up how you will devise your plan, make those decisions. You can't make people wait longer than 90 days from their start date to become eligible if they're full-time. So the easiest way to do this is to have people eligible the first of the month following 60 days of working full-time. That makes it the easiest for tracking and administration. And that is actually what I've done at every place where I've managed the employee enrollments. Shar, do you want to describe the look back period?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to kind of understand the look back period is you are picking a predetermined amount of time, whether that's 90 days, 3 months, or 6 months, and you look solely at your variable hour employees and aggregate or average out what their hours worked are during that period. So as Jennifer said earlier, sometimes they work 20 hours, sometimes they work 40 hours, right? And if they do that consistently over the time period, the look back period, then they're averaging 30 or more hours per week in that scenario, and then they become benefit eligible. So let's say in this scenario, you have a 6 month look back period, and I'm your employee, and some weeks I work 20, some weeks I work 40. It averages out over that 6 month retrospective that I have worked an average of 30 hours a week, which is benefit eligible. And so then I become benefit eligible. I get on the benefits and I stay on the benefits for 6 months because that's the amount of time before we do another look back period. And you look back during that period and you say, okay, Shar's worked less than 30 hours per week in that time, so I come off of benefits. And because I come off of benefits, then I become COBRA eligible. And that is a hot mess. So what you want to kind of make sure that you do is if you have a truly variable hour employee, that you want to ensure that they're either under all the time or over, depending on how you're managing the benefits and how your COBRA eligibility is, because in benefits, the way that you will get in trouble is through COBRA, usually when people become benefits eligible and then they do not. So that's a word of caution there. But really, that look back period is also administratively easier if you do it in the larger segments of time, like 6 months, because having to manage it over twice a year rather than every 30 days, as you can imagine, would be administratively more difficult. Jennifer, do you want to talk about the best ways to track hours and be compliant?
Yes. So as the accounting professional at the places I've worked, I've tried a few different ways to manage this. You can just look at your payrolls and kind of comb through numbers, which is not really ideal, but I have done that in the past. It's pretty time consuming. You can hire an HR company such as One Digital, or there are multiple companies out there, and have them manage it for you. You can also, if you're using a payroll service like ADP or Paychex, they have reports on there that should kind of spit this information out. For me, the best way was doing both the payroll reports and the HR company, because with those variable hour employees, even the reports that come out of your payroll can need a little massaging, because they're used to dealing with, oh, I hired this person, they're on salary. It's just more complicated as we
Sure, I
schedule.
have a question for you on something you mentioned.
Yeah.
If your employee continuously falls under the minimum number of hours to receive benefits from the company and they don't go apply for COBRA, will you get in trouble with your insurance company, or is there anything outside of just being more expensive for you? Is there any reason why you would kick them off the plan if they're falling below that minimum, even just for a little bit, for a little while?
Let me see if I understand the question. So I'm the employee. I was on benefits, or I am on benefits, but I've fallen below the threshold of being benefits eligible, and I do not elect COBRA. Is that what you're
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
That you do not. There's no problems to be had there because I am not benefit eligible and I chose not to be on COBRA anymore. So I'm off the plan by way of ineligibility, and I chose not to have COBRA. So as an employer, you're fine. As an employee, if I have benefit needs, I need to also be accountable to what hours I'm working and have a conversation with you saying, I show that I'm continuously falling below the threshold. Like, let's talk about that. And, administratively too, it's less burdensome for you as the employer if people stay consistent on the plan, right? The last thing that you want to do is try to manage who's coming on and coming off, especially in an environment where you have so many other mitigating factors, right? Did that answer your question, Heather? Perfect.
Okay, so now that you have gone through a process and you have picked the plan that you're going to offer to your employees, you will now know how much it's going to cost for your individual employee to be covered and how much it will cost for family members, spouses, and children. Then you have to decide as a business owner what percentage of that cost you're going to pay for your employees. Legally, you have to pay at least 50% of the cost. So say it costs $800, the company is going to pay $400 and the employee will pay $400. There are different situations where you are required to pay more. I think certain cover or carriers require you to pay, like, say, 75% of the premium. And then you could also just decide to pay more because it's an employee benefit and you want to make sure all of your employees have medical insurance. So you decide to choose to pay 100% of their premium. You have to make those decisions. And then you also need to decide, will you cover any of the cost of their family members? You could, I've worked for someone that didn't cover the cost of a spouse, but would pay a portion of the children. So that's just another way to offer more benefits to your employees. And then hopefully you take that information. Hopefully you have a budget for your restaurants and you know how much room you have in there to spend on employee benefits. So say you have $1,200 a month you're looking to spend, and it's going to cost you $400 per employee. You know that you now have room to offer 3 employees on your staff medical insurance. To do that, what I've found best practice is to really plan for that in your scheduling. If you know you have room for 3 people, you can offer them 3 people full-time. So you have 1 person already on salary, you don't need to worry about them. But if you want 2 other people eligible, you would pick probably your best employees with the most availability, and then schedule them for 35 hours or more a week. Because with breaks and everything, you want to make sure they're at least hitting that 30-hour minimum. And then I have found best practice to only schedule the rest of the people under 25 hours so that you don't get close with going over the 45 to 20, because inevitably people will pick up shifts along the way or call in sick. You also need to keep in mind that not all eligible employees will elect to have coverage. So some people are going to be covered by either the parents or their spouse. So you may have the availability for 3 people to be on insurance, but 1 doesn't take it. You then need to decide whether you're going to schedule 4 people and allow someone else to sign up for insurance. And I think that's usually the way people go. You know that 1 person isn't going to sign up, so you schedule 4. But then you need to keep in mind, if that's the decision that you make, that if someone leaves and then you have these 4 people you're used to scheduling full time and all 4 of them then want insurance, you need to have the ability to float that cost or quickly change your scheduling strategy. So I think making some of these decisions before, when you're rolling out your plan, is very helpful so that you do stay within the budget that you've given yourself. And keep in mind that vacation and sick time will also play into this. You're pretty safe keeping people if people are working over 30 and they take PTO, you can count that as their hours, but you're also going to have other people filling those shifts. So planning for that, having that look back period gives you some flexibility. Any questions on the budgeting portion? No, that's clear. Shar, I know you and I went back and forth a lot when I used to have people go out on FMLA or disability and they were on our medical insurance. Can you explain how that works, especially with then getting their portion of the premium because they're not getting a paycheck?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I want to clarify is the difference between PLO, Paid Leave Oregon, and FMLA. They are not the same. FMLA is the Family Medical Leave Act, and you have to have worked at least 1,560 hours in a year and been employed with you for a year and 1 day of service to qualify for FMLA. And that's one thing. Paid Leave Oregon is obviously paid leave, and you qualify having worked for 1 day. In the state of Washington, it's 820 hours, so basically part-time. And you get 12 weeks of coverage. This is hugely different and impactful for an employer, as you can imagine, on many different levels. So what I'll talk about first is Paid Leave Oregon. With Paid Leave Oregon, they can work for 1 day. They're out for 12 weeks. The state pays their disability, unless you privatize the plan, which we won't get into. And they have to stay on benefits. And they qualify, like nothing can change to them as an employee. And depending on the circumstances of why they're out for paid leave, is dependent on how you set up their contributions for not getting a paycheck to have the medical insurance. So while they're out, they don't collect a paycheck through you, they're collecting a disability payment through the state. Generally speaking, when they come back to work, they're supposed to pay the retro contributions back to the employer for while they're out. There are some asterisks with that they don't have to, one of those being maternity. I am unsure of the details of Washington, because they generally don't guide people on Washington leave. But what I do understand, it is very similar. And so that's the paid leave piece. FMLA is I've worked for you for a year. I've worked full-time for a year, and I have to go out on leave. And I'm going to be gone for intermittent time, so an hour a day or on a continuous leave, depending on what your needs are. So most often that's going to be maternity leave, though now with Paid Leave Oregon, they coincide. This stuff is super complicated, so I'm not trying to make it more confusing. But when somebody goes out on leave, then it's important to establish ahead of time, how are you going to get those contributions, right? So they're out on maternity leave 6 to 8 weeks. They have medical insurance. If they return to work, then you can collect their previous payroll deductions. But if they don't return to work, what are you going to do? Are you just going to eat the cost of both the employer and the employee piece? Or are you going to bill them, which you can do, but likely not going to collect the money? So one of the most important things is to establish, like, ahead of time in your handbook and conversations with your employees as they're going out on leave, what to do and how that's going to be handled, and you as the employer, what your potential liability is. Again, it's our recommendation to have it written in the handbook so that way you're consistent and there's no potential liability for you as the employer. And so what happens if someone just stops working enough hours? Do you drop those employees from being covered? So the answer is no. If they are a variable hour employee and you have a look back period, then you have to follow those guidelines. If they aren't on benefits, and they fall below the threshold, then you don't have to worry about anything. But like we talked about earlier, if they have fallen below that threshold and the look back period is coming up and they're not benefit eligible anymore, they can go on COBRA or they just come off. So there's a lot to think through there. Questions on anything that I've covered on that, because that was a lot.
My
No?
questions were always about collecting premiums in my accounting land, but it never went easily, never went smoothly.
Yeah,
But it
I
was
mean,
nice. And if they're on maternity leave, honestly, I don't want them worrying about it as well.
yeah. Next slide, please.
Maybe.
Star, can you give us some examples of a reason for being out that you may have to pay your FMLA or the employer back for that forwarded money? So like, what are some of those ailments or reasons for being out where you would have to pay back that money?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you are on a leave of absence, undisclosed or otherwise, whether it's a medical reason or mental health, or sometimes people don't give you a reason, they just want to go out on, not want to, they need to go out on leave of absence. So those would be instances where they would potentially have to pay back. The other thing to take into consideration are that if you're under 50 full-time employees, you don't have to offer medical insurance. And the other additional benefits, the rules are completely different because why not? And we don't like to be consistent in the insurance world. So dental vision don't have to follow the same rules as medical, and you can offer those to anybody. You can choose to make contributions to that or not. It can be completely voluntary, which is the employee pays for it, or you can share in the cost. Um, and so those are some additional benefit considerations. You can offer life insurance, disability, critical care insurance, an employee assistance program, or do a wellness program, health savings accounts, 401ks. As a small employer, there's Oregon Saves, which you are mandated to contribute to for your employees as an alternative for the 401k. And then, using these benefits that involve scheduling and days off are a great way for employees to feel incentivized without having a price tag attached to it. So that's nice as well. Um,
Let me jump in really quick.
mhm.
Just to expand, an employee assistance program. We had that at one of my employers you can offer that to every single employee, and it involves mental health, actual counseling, legal advice, financial advice. I found that to be a great thing to say that we had. And often employees will contact you when they're in trouble or suffering in some way. And it was really nice as a person working in HR to have that in my back pocket to say, this is not going to be any cost to you. You should contact this company. And my favorite thing, I think, when I've done scheduling is to offer a set schedule. If you have a great employee that's always there for you, always shows up, and it's so much easier to make a life when you have a set schedule, set days off. So I think that's a great benefit that doesn't actually hit the bottom line directly. But if you can do things like that to take care of your people, I think it's great.
Absolutely.
Let's see. I'll let you go here, Shar.
Thank you. So, you know, when I'm strategizing with you, one of the things that I'd like to always point out are there are tons of ways that we can do this, but the three consistent, most actionable ways are, for you to identify areas of disconnection. What's the feedback from your employees about the benefits? What's the perception of the benefits being offered? Because those are usually two different conversations. And how do you determine what people want? Are you going to give them a survey? Are you small enough that you can ask them? Do you feel comfortable asking them? Do they know what they want, and what are those conversations around that? The other thing is personalizing the benefits for your workforce. No two employees are the same, nor do they have the same wants and needs, right? And so trying to manage the differences in that can be really daunting. And so, what we try to do is create a way to buy in and having different options available for their different needs. So one employee might want pet insurance and another one might want life insurance. Another one might want commuter benefits. So the point being, like, knowing your employee workforce and really having an idea of how to create and craft a benefit strategy that works for as many people. And it doesn't have to be expensive, and it's more inclusive to everybody. And that ties in with the culture and communication. As a small business, you interact closely with your employees and customers, and you get to bear witness firsthand to the impact of that engagement. And that's where you have it in spades compared to a larger company, right? And so by establishing that sense of community and environment where your employees feel seen and heard goes a long way in retaining and attracting the employees year over year. And creating that strategy with culture and communication in mind is the best way to do it. And so, with our benefit guiding principles, these are some of the things that we do at One Digital and what I do when I'm helping create an employee benefit strategy for your business regardless of size, excuse me. And like I talked about, it's the employee experience. What technology do we want to roll out and, have a budget for? The continuity of communication, education, making sure that year over year we're able to stay consistent. How do we innovate? What do we do? And what do we say we do, and how we're going to do it? And how do we stay competitive both together when we're working together, but yourself as a business, right? What are your financial strategies, and what's your budget, and how can we have a balance between the ongoing cost of providing benefits, which is the second most expensive line item behind payroll, and then how do we manage that year over year, and then what does that look like when we're engaging with your employees? And then lastly, this is just some of the things to think about when you are doing your overall strategy, excuse me. Um, our recommendations always to be proactive and have a handbook, have an analysis, make sure that you are communicating what you're implementing. If you want to do job benchmarking, the list goes on. And this is just some of the HR stuff that Jennifer and I can provide together or separately.
Well, and I find that mostly working for small to mid-sized companies, you don't usually have a full-on HR staff that in my line of work as an accountant, I've always been tasked with HR as well. And so having had someone like Shar or Shar herself available to me, she was always there to help devise the plan, ask the appropriate questions, but also once it was rolled out, I had a never ending list of questions. And so it's really nice having someone to go to that specializes in that portion of HR. So I found that really helpful.
Thank you. And me and my team always say that we're an extension of your team, right? Like, we want to help provide communications and support you and your employees to the extent that you'll let us. And that looks different for each of your businesses. And, whatever I can do to help, that's what I'm here for.
Well, thank you for letting us talk about this thing that I have always found difficult to manage, whichever company I'm working for. So are there any other questions about any of the items we discussed? No, we were right on.
Oh, no, I got one question.
Okay, Eric.
Um, so first of all, thank you both for this. This was so illuminating. I am curious about the potential of basically giving employees a stipend to shop for health insurance on the marketplace. Are there benefits to that? Does it run afoul of of anything?
I love that question. Thank you for asking it. So I always strongly recommend against offering a stipend, and here's why. They are you are going off of trust that they are purchasing healthcare, right? And time again, they do not, right? And so then what happens when you grow to the size of having to offer or wanting to offer benefits, right? Do you take the stipend away from them? Or like it's just so much more complicated than that. And then it can also feel really inequitable if somebody who is a variable hour employee gets a stipend and they don't realize that they're variable hour and they're talking to a part-timer and in a course of a week they both worked 20 hours but one's getting a stipend and the other isn't. It just gets really messy. And when I have seen employers get in trouble, it is because of COBRA and because of a stipend.
Gotcha. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Of course.
I have two questions for you. Can you define the difference between variable hourly employee and part-time employee if they're both working 20 hours a week? And then I'll follow up with another question after.
Great question. A part-time employee is an employee who 100% of the time works less than 20 hours a week. And that is the definition. The difference between a part-time and a variable hour is the variable hour, 1 week will work 20 hours and 1 week will work 40 hours. So there's variability in their hours. And so sometimes they're cresting the full time and sometimes they're not. And you have to remember full time in benefits, because we like to be complicated, is 30 hours a week and not 40. And so that gets even trickier, right? So, a lot of times employers forget that and they're saying, well, they're only working, 20 hours this week, 30 hours this week, but 30 hours is full time.
Well, and one thing I thought I should point out, because I ran into it when talking to someone this week, is the common ownership. So often people think that they don't have 50 full-time employees because they have a different LLC for every company they have. But if they're all owned by one person, you have to look at that all as one employer. And so I've run into this multiple times where people get advice to keep them all separate, but they're still not actually separate. So I need to actually have that conversation with someone this week that
That's a
we
great-
need to actually recalculate.
Great call out. Yep.
Great call out. Yeah, for sure. What is, in your experience, the reaction of the variable hours and hourly employees when there is a different insurance structure for leadership versus your variable hourly? Do you find that that is received well amongst staff, or do you feel that that creates an inequity? Can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. It depends on how it's communicated, right? Usually, if you build it in with an incentive. So, one of the things that I really think is advantageous to the employer and the employee is structuring it based off of tenure. So, if less than a year, you get X. If a year to 3 years, you get Y. And so that tends to be received really well. And you have something to achieve too. For, right? Like, and you have less turnover. But also, I think that generally speaking, there's an understanding that management is going to get different benefits or at least a different contribution to benefits than the hourly employees. But it's again also how you communicate it. It's usually not rolled out at the same time. So you're having a conversation with just management about what their contributions are, and then everybody else instead of collectively.
All right,
Great
well,
question.
thank you so much for letting us present this today. I really appreciate the fact that you're all here, and
Same.
this was great. So please feel free to reach out to both of us should you need and have any questions or want to roll out a plan. And we'd be happy to help and just answer questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you both so much for your time and energy today. Really appreciate it. You're such an expert. You guys are both such experts. And yeah, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, you guys. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.